I walk.
There he is.
I just walk, so it's distracting. So I shut myself off.
Well, I had to exile fly out to the sun porch because she insists on nudging my elbow with her head every time I try to type. So she's been sent into the outer darkness, where we find out if she's poisoned herself again. I heard noises during my spiritual direction section. I realized later that she'd gotten a whole thing of mint Oreo cookies down off the counter and eaten like a number of them.
Oh,
So far, she's had a pretty iron stomach, but we'll see where that one goes. But
He's trying to keep you thin, Father Reardon.
yeah,
Yes.
she is. What she's gonna do that on October 21st, 3:45. Let me see. There. Good. Everything hitting at once here. Let's see. Okay. Make sure I actually have this appointment. Sorry about this. Yeah. So let's get beginning since it's a little after 7. Welcome or welcome back, as the case may be. And I'm going to go ahead and share tonight's PowerPoint. Okay. Here we are. So this is our second session of Christianity in Conversation with Other Religious Beliefs. Our meeting tonight is on the religious beliefs of Indigenous peoples, and a couple repeats of previous stuff. Welcome to Emmanuel, Cumberland. So we have a picture of that, and then to welcome you from my home to yours, since that's where I am. So I'll get you a picture of that. And I thought we'd do a little review from last week, just the main ideas. The first was that we talked about some mutual expectations, that we start and end on time. We're doing better, not best, but we're getting there. And please remain muted when you are not speaking. If you need to get up and use the bathroom, or if you need to leave, or if you need to do something else, just do it quietly. And of course, keep an open mind, display respect and courtesy to others. Try to use I statements. I see it this way, rather than anything accusing others of things. And then try to contribute without dominating. So if you've spoken and you realize there's someone else in the group that hasn't spoken yet, maybe take that time to ask what they think before you contribute a new thing, so that everybody has some time to contribute. And I tend to divide this life into 3 questions, and I do this based on questions that one of my professors at Church Divinity School of the Pacific would ask in analyzing a parish. And I think I'm using it differently from her intention, but she would always ask, what's going on? What's really going on? And what's really, really going on? And I think that's a good way to think about how we talk about anything. What's going on is what's right in front of us. Who, what, when, where. We can look at physical realities. We can look at physical realities, what we can observe in front of us, as we started with the pictures of the Kennedys on November 22nd, 1963. We were able to you talk about what would we observe? Why did we know that it was not present time from what they were wearing? What do we see? What was happening that day? And then we can go deeper and ask what is really going on. So what's going on beneath the surface? What's happening to the people, psychologically, politically, the economy, all the ways we analyze our world. And most of our time we spend in these 2 questions. The third question is what's really, really going on? And that is where spirituality and religion come in. They're trying to answer the ultimate questions. What is ultimate reality? What's really real? Where did it all come from? Where's it all going? What does it all mean? What is our origin? What is our destiny? And those are the questions of the reality of the spirit, what we call it the transcendent, what's beyond our grasp. And so I talked a little about spirituality and religion. Some people would disagree there's such a thing as religion, because each one is kind of a unique expression. They're not necessarily like different versions of a fast food restaurant. Spirituality is our attempt to relate to what's most fully transcendent, beyond ourselves, and what's most deeply intimate or immanent. And it's our awareness and attempt to respond to ultimate reality. What do I think it's all about? And how does that affect what I do with my life? And it can involve both rational and non-rational thought. It's not just logic. It's not just science. That doesn't mean irrational thought, but it means thought that's open to realities beyond what we're fully able to grasp through reason. And religion is a cultural, communal, way of trying to live out our spirituality. And we often find our spirituality in it. The idea of an individual spirituality where I'm spiritual but not religious is a relatively recent phenomenon. And religion goes back to a Latin word that means to bind or to tie. And religions are trying to help people tied to reality beyond the surface of life. It's a way of understanding the big events of our lives through ritual, birth, coming of age, marriage, illness, death. And they're ways of getting us past what's just in front of our five senses. And I find it helpful to think of four things when I talk about any religious system. And this is all review, so I'm going fast, but if you have questions, let me know. So first, what are its sources? Where did it come from? When did it start? What was going on culturally, historically? Does it claim any sources of revelation? Then we ask, what does it believe is about ultimate reality? What does it say is really true, really real? And usually it'll describe what's wrong. Because one of the questions we ask is, why is our life hard? Why do people suffer? Why do we have war? Why do we have poverty? Why do we have death? Why do we have conflict? And, what stops human life from being what it's supposed to be? And then what's the way beyond that? Is there a path to take beyond that? So those are the four things we look at when we look at a religion. Any questions on that review or comments before we move on? Okay, I want to move on to the religious beliefs and practices of indigenous peoples. Indigenous peoples, another name for that is the First Nations. These are people who have descended from the original inhabitants of lands that are now controlled by larger political systems in which they may have little influence. That's about 4% of the world's population. So think about Native Americans, the first people that lived on this continent. When you think of, the Mayans and the Aztecs and the Incas, we think about African tribes, think about Pacific Islanders, the Aboriginal Australians. We're talking about the first people that got to a place. Often, since then, other groups have taken over that place and have changed the culture. They brought sometimes pressure to convert to what the colonizers wanted for religion. It sometimes hurt the natural environment, and it brought disease. And there's a great analysis you can read. There's a book called Guns, Germs, and Steel about how Europe came to dominate much of the world through a series of things that came together. But we're talking about these very first people. And one thing is that these groups have had to respond to being colonized, to being part of things, as we see. So like Native Americans in this country now live in this predominantly white, predominantly Christian environment. And their question is, what do we do with our folkways, our beliefs, our practices? And so some just convert. Some go over and join the colonizers' religion, and some quietly keep their own traditions going, and some do kind of a mix, as we'll look at. If you've heard of voodoo or Santeria or candomblé, different forms where on the outside they look like they're being Christians, but underneath they're doing some of their old stuff in a kind of a hidden way. And sometimes old traditions have been lost. They don't have new people passing them on, or the oral traditions aren't being passed on. And some are spreading and becoming known, to other people who become curious about them. And we'll see some of that. Questions or comments so far? So in terms of what their sources are, the sources are their ancient beliefs and practices of these peoples, and often passed down through folklore, not because these are really not pre-verbal, but these are countries that existed, cultures that existed before they had the written word. So things are passed down through oral tradition. And they develop in different parts of the world. So it's not like there's just one indigenous religion. I mean, they're not all alike, but there are some overarching themes. And one especially is they don't tend to make a distinction between secular and sacred. Anyone want to share, what do we mean when we say something secular? I can't see you raise your hand, so just jump in. Anyone have a definition for secular?
I would say. Well, secular would, in my mind, has something to do with the second distinction of looking at it, the first distinction, what's going on, without looking at what's really going on or really going on. Just kind of the immediate thing in front of you that is ordinary, that you practice or do all the time, but it's not necessarily connected with that other question of what's really something like that.
That's a good way of putting it, Jack. You're connecting to the other things we talked about. Secular is within this world, business and, trade and social life and all those things that are just out there. And we tend, especially in our culture, with freedom of religion, where we have multiple religions and freedom of religion in our country, we've made religion kind of a private thing. So the secular world sort of dominates, and religion becomes something we just do privately. That, we can work with people of different religious backgrounds and all the rest. And that's just what you do on the weekend in a way. We see it as reserved off that way. And, but that's a distinction we've come to make. But the secular is just sort of everyday reality. And what does it mean to say something sacred?
I think sacred is more like, what do I want to say? Maybe like something if you have like something of value that's like sacred to you. Like, okay, I have this memento and it's, very, very sacred to me, or I have this, or I have something that somebody gave me that's sacred to me, or you could say you worship something that's sacred to you.
Yeah. And so we've got, in this night of uncooperative dogs, Lydia has to pee, so I'm going to walk us out. Yeah, sacred, part of it has to do with what's important to us. If you hold something sacred, it means it's central to you. And but sacred also deals with what is sort of spiritual, what's holy, what's beyond the regular world. That it's divine things. Okay, now they both won out. This is going to be painful. Okay, I've got to do. Okay. You're fine. Fly, Craig. Come on. In your crate. Good girl. Good girl. Okay. Good girl. Okay. I need more cooperative dogs and animals. So she's in the crate, so I can just deal with one of them. Livia tends to be pretty efficient about her business. Here we go. So sacred has to do with, what is of ultimate importance, with the sense of the holy, the sense of awe, the sense of mystery. And we tend to, talk about sacred and profane. Oh, now Prenny's out. All the animals are just out to get me tonight. Anyhow, you don't want to see Lydia pee, though. Let's see.
Talk about secular.
Secular, yeah. Prenny, don't go on the road and don't kill things. It's not nice. Let's see. I tell him that every time he goes out. It doesn't seem to change anything. He usually doesn't go there. Come on, Olivia, we have to go in. And so one common element is that Indigenous people don't tend to make that distinction. The secular and the sacred rule together. So whereas we think, okay, I'm going to the bank, I'm going to the grocery store, I'm going to my job, that's a secular thing. Now I'm going to church, that's sacred. Now I'm praying, that's sacred. Whereas for these are more life ways. It's a way of living that permeates everything, so that there's sacred in the ordinary, which other religions will do that in other ways too. But Livia, we're not going for a long walk. She's dragging me now because she wants to do number 2 in a far distant corner. Can you all hear me all right?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. And so it's a different way of living. We get on to the next slide. And so and again, these are not all agreeing. And one distinction I want to make is often when we say, oh, these are the first peoples, they were pre-literate, they didn't write things down. So we tend to think, oh, it's primitive, almost as though their religious beliefs held less water or worth than more sophisticated ones. And that's not necessarily true. Often these original cultures had tremendous insights that we can all still learn from, certainly in terms of the environmental movement, understanding the sacredness of seeing a mountain as a person, to see the land as a person. It can affect the way we do things. Okay, come on, Livia, in we go, come on. Oh, she is stubborn. When she doesn't want to do something, she pulls back. Livia, do it now or we're going in. I'm busy. Oh, I'm sorry my life is hijacked consistently. This is why I should just work from church, I guess, with her not around. She's looking for her special spot.
Her sacred spot, right?
Her sacred spot, yes, to do her sacred duty. And at least she doesn't do
Okay, I have a question for what you
Yes.
just said.
Okay.
That they say things, you said things were like people. Like when people say things about Mother Nature, would that be similar to that?
Well, the idea of seeing nature as your mother certainly would be part of that. Oh, the moon is enormous tonight. It's just coming up over the trees. Must be the harvest moon. And then, but to see the moon, well, if you think about in like the Christian tradition, Saint Francis of Assisi would talk about brother sun and sister moon, would see there being life in everything. And so seeing nature as our mother, seeing ourselves as related to it, rather than nature as just something to conquer or destroy. There we go. We're doing everything. Good girl, Livia. Good girl. So I'm watching a dog take a dump while I'm looking at this gorgeous moon rising while we talk about sacred things. Come on, Livia, let's go in. You did your business. Come on. Livia, we have to go in now. Come on. Come on. Soon we'll be up to a video. I got to get her in. And then Prenny took advantage of a door being open, so he's going out in the dark. So Livia, not now. I don't have time. And I tried to have them take care of everything before we started, but it didn't work that way. Okay. There. All right, here we go. All right, she's in. This door closed. Let fly back out of the crate. She's already peed. Oh, great. Yeah, my life is a very bad thing. I am oppressed by animals who seem to make my existence much more complicated than it needs to be. And so, but one of the names for this belief that is common to a large extent across different indigenous religions, which are not necessarily more primitive in the sense that they're less developed. They often have deep beauty to them. But the idea is that everything has a spirit in it. All reality is alive. Everything's interrelated. So there's a sense that the ancestors are close, the gods, what's beyond this. And everything comes out for the Aborigines, what's called the dream time, which is similar to our once upon a time.
Right.
And this
right.
belief is sometimes known as animism, the idea that everything's animated. And so I'm going to show you a clip you may have seen from the Disney film Pocahontas, which is, a very romanticized version of Native American life and of the story of what actually happened with Pocahontas. But here she is meeting this Englishman named John Smith, and he thinks she's a savage, and she's trying to teach him it ain't necessarily so. And she's explaining.
Good night.
So
Sorry.
let's take a listen to this. Please mute your stuffs.
Think I'm an ignorant savage, and you've been so many places. I guess it must be so, but still I cannot.
Whoops. Can everyone hear that?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay. Let me go back to it. Sorry about that.
If the savage one is me, how can there be so much that you don't know? You don't know. Think you own whatever land you land on. The earth is just a dead thing you can claim. But I know every rock and tree and creature has a life, has a spirit, has a name. Think the only people who are people are the people who look and think like you. But if you walk the footsteps of a stranger, you'll learn things you never knew, never knew. Have you ever heard the wolf cry to the blue corn moon? That's why he grins. Can you sing with all the voices of the mountain? Can you paint with all the colors of the wind? Can you paint with all the colors of the wind? Come run the hidden pine trails of the forest. Come taste the sun-sweet berries of the earth. Come roll in all the riches all around you. And for once, never wonder what there were. The rainstorm and the river are my brothers. The heron and the otter are my friends. Other in a circle, in a hoop that never ends. You cut it down, then you'll never know. And you'll never cry the blue or moon, but whether we are white or copper hue. Spin the voices of the mountain, paint with all the colors of the wind. You can own the earth, and still all you'll own is earth until you can all the colors of the wind.
Whoops. I was supposed to stop sharing. It won't go away. Okay. There we go. So I went to ask, are there lines that dropped out of you in terms of the understanding of the world that Pocahontas is conveying to John Smith compared to his own?
I really loved learn things you never knew you never knew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, learn the things you never knew, things that are outside your spectrum. Ed, you had a hand up. You're the polite one. You have to unmute.
Yeah, I'm trying to unmute. I'm unmuted. Everything has a name, everything has a spirit. And you mentioned Dreamtime of the Australian Aborigines.
Yes.
I understood that to be what some people would describe as soul travel, others as astral projection, or Dr. Ryan at Duke, Ubi, out of body experience. Um, and it's, I don't think it's not universal in Aboriginal or Indigenous peoples, but it's a very common practice.
Yeah.
And among some of us too.
Yeah. And yeah, I don't know if Dream Team is just about those practices, but I think it has to do with the universal. It's almost the time before time, the time before everything came. I think that's my understanding, but I am no expert on Australian Aborigines, so you may know more about it than I do. You've taught sociology, but yeah, I think it may include those things. But Dreamtime is almost, I think of it as being, you know, the place before time, before place, almost like when we say once upon a time, or in the
Yeah.
beginning when the
It's
earth
a
was
place
void.
that the Aborigines to which they could travel.
Yeah, I don't think traveled, if they just
extra-
went in and out of it. Yeah.
Yeah, extracorporeally, they leave their bodies and
Yeah. Are there
When
other
they
things
navigate,
that people
they,
picked up on from the song, Jack?
yeah, the Aborigines find their direction where they're going with what they call song lines.
Hmm.
And it's a way of navigating over the earth. It's a song that they follow.
Mhm.
And in some of their stories, the idea that the creator sang the world into existence. You see, that would be dream time.
Yeah.
But what I'm thinking of is the native, at least I think the Cheyenne have this word, pronounce it for Taku Shikan Chikan. It kind of means like the wind that goes through everything. And I was thinking of the beginning of Genesis when it says something like the spirit or wind of God was moving over the over the surface of the waters. And then God said that to be light. So there's this idea, this ruah, this wind, this spirit, this moving. And I think they tap into that in the Genesis story. So yeah, there's that idea, I think, of it's not everything has a spirit, it's that everything is part of the same spirit, the same cloth, you see. That's how they see it. And so and it's true then everything would be sacred at the same time. Like I'm thinking like, so you're going outside with the dog and doing its business, and you got the moon rising. Well, you kind of entered the center space there.
Mm.
But the dog and the moon,
Yes.
that's kind of the central place of the spirit, you know.
It is. While I'm busy holding a laptop and talking to all of you.
Yeah, you kind of entered into this central place
Yes.
inadvertently.
Yeah.
You didn't plan it, but when you have the moonshine and the dogs and it's something about that
Yeah.
field that's central to.
Oh, it is. I mean, I was thinking, I wish this class were over and I could go out here and just stare at the moon. It's so beautiful tonight and so big, and watching it rise over the trees. I thought that was the blessing of having Livia drag me out there. And but I was thinking in the song, I love when she says, have you ever looked at things and not just wondered what they're worth in terms of monetary value? I remember my dad was a real estate man, and there's a park in Hingham, Massachusetts, a couple towns over from where I grew up, called World's End. It's a series of sort of islands going out into Hingham Harbor and woods and fields. And at the very end of it, yeah, you can look out and see the Boston skyline. And it's a gorgeous place to walk. And it's a nature reserve. And I remember telling my dad, oh, we visited World's End. It's so beautiful. And he said, there's 360 buildable lots on that. And that was his first answer, was he looked at that and saw the money that can be made if you could develop it.
Yeah.
Which is a classic American way to look at it. And I love the man, but I wanted to swat him. Kind of like, it was like, you don't get the beauty of this. Thank God they stopped them from doing that. You know, and of course, you know, they'd be multi-million-dollar homes today, you know, incredible views. And but it was somehow donated and preserved for everyone to use and walk through. But to look at it and not wonder what it's worth, to talk about the things you never knew. And what are we aware of? And the idea of the life that's in things. Yes, Ed?
So
Well,
I
Lydia,
like this.
what's it?
Uh,
Well,
part of our mythology
we'll Ed first, then Lydia. Okay, go ahead.
is that we swindled the Native Americans by, was it $23 or something worth
Yeah.
of trinkets, whereas from their perspective, they were swindling the newcomers because it was ludicrous to them to think that the land could be owned.
Yeah,
It was something to be shared and protected for
yeah.
for the next generation. So just kind of two different perspectives on
Which is one of the
owning.
reasons why it was easy to take them, because they didn't have a sense this is mine and this is yours. It's like we're all just here. I mean, they did fight over
I
things,
mean,
obviously.
you could own some things.
Yeah,
You know, horses, and also they made a distinction between something of theft or borrowing without asking. If you took a horse that you intended to return, that was not stealing. That was just using.
yeah.
Whereas the white culture, if you took a horse without permission, that was horse theft and a hanging fence.
Yeah. It's a different way of seeing things. Lydia, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I like this sentence also. Can you paint with the colors of the wind?
Yes.
It reminds me, when the wind ripples the waves, the color continuously changes and glides over the water. The same with leaves. When the wind ripples through the tree leaves,
Mm.
the colors change so quickly. And so it is with awe. How can you make such beautiful colors?
And the
Oh
idea
my
that the
God.
wind has colors, just it's crossing over from sight to
Yeah.
feeling to
They call
touch
that
to
synesthesia. Call that
sound.
synesthesia.
It's almost like asking, what does E flat smell like?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And yet it's the idea is how do you get beyond the limitations? Can you paint with all the colors of the wind?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
your imagination and the sense of mystery and
Yeah.
awe is
Yeah.
there.
And
I had
I think that, and obviously that over romanticizes, I mean, one mistake we can make is saying, oh, those things were just primitive and have nothing to teach us. And others to say that it was all wonderful then. I mean, there is some dark aspects to those. It's not like they were never warlike people or other bad things happening in earlier cultures. I mean, life's always more complicated than we'd like to make it. But,
I had a friend a number of years ago who was a professor of English at Frostburg,
yeah.
and she was Hindi, and her specialty was mythology.
Hmm.
And I learned a lot from her, and her take on these indigenous stories and legends and things like that is that the overarching theme seems to be don't take it for granted.
Yeah.
There is a line that you cannot cross.
Hmm. And
that all the stories are about that, and so you learn from an early age not to take it for granted, and take care of the earth without the knowledge of biology, physics, or anything like that. It's just the story. When I do my outdoor education stuff, I try to end it with everyone saying this phrase. It's from the Lakota language, is Mataki Asin, and it means, loosely translated, all my relatives. So if I leave the woods and I say Mataki Asin, there's something that happens inside. Well, I am a relative. I'm not part of the culture that is above that. I am in those moments. When I say Mataki Asin, it feels like that. It's beautiful.
it is. Let's go. Let's see. Put you onto the next thing. There you go. And so, these are themes we've kind of come up with. Whoops, gone too far here. Now I come back. Let's see, gotta go forward. Computer's being very uncooperative. The dogs are uncooperative. So the idea that there's a circle of right relationships that, it's keeping things in right relationship with each other. It's very important. So you respect the earth. You don't, take more than you give, and you let the circle of life take over. you let things be connected. And along with that is that we're related to the spirit. We're related to spiritual energy, to power, and that we're related to everything. We're all kin. Go away. And I have to put her back out on the porch again. She's not leaving me alone. Now she knows I'm mad and she's talking about kinship with all creation. And I'm fine.
Yeah, right.
And therefore cannot attend to you every Wednesday. Right here in Papa. There. She may have to go out too, but she's going to have to wait. She had her chance. But talk about kinship with all creation. Some of your you can't pick your family always sometimes. And dogs are just like kids. They become very needy when they know you're trying to do something else.
Yeah.
But the idea that we're all connected is a central intuition that I think in our Western culture, we separate body from spirit and mind from body and individual from individual. And there's a sense of unity. So then, I kind of made this up. So what's the problem for humans? I would say it would appear that when we're out of harmony, if we're not in right relationship with the ancestors or the gods, if we're not in right relationship with each other, with the earth, with creation, we're not keeping to our part in it, then there's disharmony and there's problems. And so the entire ways of life are built around building and nurturing these right relationships. And so the path, some aspects have to do with spiritual specialists, sometimes known as Hikoya, which is a Lakota for a sacred fool, but people who tell the stories of creation. Who, Jack is so good at that. And if I summarize what I love about being a priest, it's that I always say, it's an old Baptist song. I love to tell the story of Jesus and his love. Now, the people that come and tell the story and hold you and mystical intermediaries. And so shamans is a term, especially those who are sort of between the physical and non-physical world, and often sometimes called a medicine man. And you're talking about people who have the ability to heal, and often people who are chosen to be shamans have something that marks them as being different. Often they're those who have epileptic seizures because they're seen as having greater openness and understanding of the spirit world. Those who are what we would call physical deformities, those who are two-spirited, those who have different sexuality or gender, they sort of stand apart, don't fit with everybody else, are often seen as having a special contact with what's spiritual and what's beyond. And it can involve things like different rituals to bring things into right relationship, and also vision quests, which you may have heard of, which is a Native American idea where you fast for a certain number of days and you sort of induce, often sitting in a sweat lodge or a smoke lodge, and induce the ability to see your spirit animals. You come to see things you wouldn't see, to get intuitions you wouldn't otherwise get. And I have a bunch of examples. We're not going to get through them all. I have 2 pages of clips. And this one I find how many of you ever heard of Hakas? Ed, you have a hand up.
I was just going to, the vision quest is oftentimes augmented by psychotropic substances.
Yes.
Either naturally through the physical ordeal of fasting and sleep deprivation, but datura, peyote, cannabis, and other substances.
Yes, my doctoral dissertation was about a man who critiqued the work of Aldous Huxley, who argued that if you take the mescaline, which is a root ingredient in peyote, it could open people to spiritual awareness. And the guy I was writing with said, no, it doesn't really do that. It would just get you high. And he was criticizing it. But the idea is that different substances open us to different forms of perception. And Aldous Huxley's famous book was called The Doors of Perception. And that's where the rock group The Doors got their name from.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
But a Haka
Great book, great rock group.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then my guy, R.C. Zahner, wrote a book called Mysticism, Sacred and Profane, where he tore Huxley to shreds. And then they went back and forth. Well, and so I ended up studying Zahner, but that's part of my nefarious past. But a haka is a Maori war dance. And often, like even teams or whatever, or opposing tribes would do these things to try to show their strength and to show their spirit and to show their spirit and to show their something to intimidate the other one. And haka often can be done as a tribute to someone. There's a video of a haka being done at a school for a teacher who is retiring in New Zealand. But here, this was a few years ago in New Zealand. I think, I forget the exact year, 2017 or 18, a terrorist shot people in a mosque in Christchurch, New Zealand. And, killed a number of people. It was a mass shooting, which is less common there than here, but it was someone, dealing with anti-Muslim hatred who turned on people. And fellow students of those who were killed performed a haka in the street. And I'd invite you just to observe it and see what's going on inside them and how are they using this ancient format to convey what's happening to them.
John, we're not seeing or hearing anything.
Looks like he's frozen.
Yeah.
All I'm seeing is a blue screen.
Sure.
I would have to say he's frozen.
No, he's not.
I'm frozen, I think.
What do you think? I mean, none of us, I don't know what the words meant. And
Hey, John, we didn't
Yep.
see any of that.
you didn't?
We just saw a blank screen.
I wish someone had said something while I was doing it.
We
We
tried.
did.
I didn't hear you,
tried
sorry.
to.
Look at
I
chat.
had
tried
share
to.
screen, share sound. Let's go back to it. That's weird.
Yeah.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Let's do it again.
yes.
Did you see it that time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I
Yeah.
heard it too.
And we lost someone named Jenny. Oops, there they are again. I thought I'd get rid of them. It's a different one. Yeah. Whoops, what am I doing?
Looks like they're having a rave.
Yeah, this was it has, yeah, what I mean, I don't know the culture. And Ed, you have a hand up as well.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that was the name for it. I am familiar with that dance. Several things impressed me. One, most of the times I've seen the dance performed, it's been males only, and here were males and females. There was a leader. There were also synchronized and uniform movements, but there were also individual movements and individual sounds and expressions. And the young woman who made the rather fierce faces, I think, common to that ritual is, you know, to scare away the evil spirits. But
That said, it was scaring the evil spirits, sometimes intimidating the other team. It looked like there was one adult that was there, and I noticed that there were like kids who looked like they had Maori background, but there were also very white kids there. That you know, there was one boy that looked like he was of Irish background, almost, you know, freckles and almost reddish hair, and so you had different. But the kids at their school had learned this as part of the culture. And I just saw an article recently, like asking, should people who aren't Maori do hakas or whatever? Is it cultural appropriation? Although in this case, these kids all came together and it was something they clearly learned. And all the kids in there knew the words and knew the movements, regardless of their own blood background. What did you get a sense that ritual meant to them in the context of what had happened?
I thought it seemed like very powerful. And like just by their faces and like their eyes, I don't know if anybody else saw this or not, but just by their eyes, it looked like I could tell they were trying to scare off something or somebody. Because they almost looked like they're like a few times by like a few of the people, like their eyes were almost gonna like pop out or bug out or something, you know?
Yeah, it felt like to me like an angry energy.
Yeah.
It was kind of defiant in a way.
Defiant. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like, here we are here.
Yeah.
Leave us alone.
Yeah.
We're here and we honor those you've taken from us.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They're still saying they're connecting to them, and whatever evil is out there, it best get out of here.
Yeah.
And which is odd because often, I mean, I think I read about an African tribe once where after a funeral, they run over and beat up the first stranger they see. But it brings in the anger part of grief, which we as a culture tend to deny. Just how pissed off you are when someone you love dies.
it definitely seemed to be an expression of grief, but displaced with rage.
Yeah.
I mean, it certainly didn't seem playful or happy, although some of those gestures are like that. Even there's another one where they're doing a tribute to a retiring teacher. And so there are other times, and it still has some of that, and I don't know the full meaning, but it was very moving to see that those kids found this common way to express something that's beyond expressible. I mean, they've lost, you think of us after 9/11 or something, they've lost, all these classmates to a mass shooting, to an act of irrational hatred. And they're trying to come together after that and reaffirm who they are. So I find that very moving.
Yeah, it was an absolute expression of in-group solidarity.
Yeah, there is one, the way they move, the language, everything.
Yeah.
And comparing cultural expressions, I will forever remember when the incident happened, the gunman attacked a Bible study in Charleston, South Carolina, and killed the priest and the other people at the Bible study. The reaction, that of course brought the cameras and the reporters immediately to that space. And directly outside of the church, standing in the middle of the street, was a circle of people from the church in a prayer circle.
Wow.
And I was so struck by that, because I would have reacted the way this hake dance and being so angry. And I was so moved by the fact that they could go into their Christian faith and find that to be the needed reaction at the time. So just comparing cultural reactions and ways of expression.
Some years ago, someone killed a number of Amish children in a mass shooting.
Oh,
The Amish community
they-
went to the family. The guy
yes,
went to his family's home to offer them forgiveness.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's sort of like, well, the ritual, I don't know if you remember after Pope John Paul II was shot in the early 1980s. And there's a famous shot. He went to the prison to visit his would-be assassin. And the shot of them sitting there like he's doing counseling.
Wow.
I
And
think he froze.
I mean, just that we shall miss you, Ed. Have a good night. Ed,
Thank you.
the
Next week.
yes, next week. Hinduism next week. But when you think of those gestures and what does ritual do at a time like that, when the feelings are just beyond what you can even handle. And I remember 9/11, we gathered, I was at a Catholic college at the time in Pennsylvania. We went to the chapel and had a service that night. And then people were gathered like a night after that outdoors, I think sometimes with candles and all that, but you come together with some ritual. But our first response was not, although it's interesting, is the anger, like songs that became big, like Toby Keith's The Angry American, it's all about, which was part of the feeling. And then, but there's others where people just went and donated blood and prayed. I mean, how do you respond when something unspeakable happens, unspeakably bad, or hopefully sometimes unspeakably good? But let's look at some of the others that I just have a collection. We won't get to them all, but if you remind me, I can email these things to you. And this is a Australian, still over in Oceania, Australian Aboriginal kangaroo dance, which has to do with how do you show appreciation to take on the spirit of an animal.
Yeah.
Can everyone see it?
No,
Not yet.
Not yet?
no.
That's weird. I wonder why you don't see it the first time I share it.
Because it's blank.
I'm sorry. You see something though. Do you
No.
see something now?
Dance of the kangaroo. In my grandmother's language, we call it the kangaroo bunda.
No, we can't see it.
Bunda,
Can you see it?
No,
No.
it's just
No.
blue.
You cannot see it,
No.
and you can't hear. I wonder why. This is weird.
We could only hear Pocahontas. We couldn't.
Oh, you couldn't
See
see
her.
the video for Pocahontas?
No,
No,
we
sir.
could- but I thought that's how you wanted it. so
No,
I
it
didn't
wasn't.
see
It's a beautiful
anything.
video. I could have given you the version that was just the song. I wanted you to see it all. It was so beautiful. The point where John Smith's trying to shoot a mother bear and Pocahontas stops him, and then he picks up the cub and holds it, and they're
I think
going
we
through all
all
the
just
colors of the
guessed
wind.
that you just wanted us to hear it.
No, I wanted you to see it. I don't know why sharing isn't letting you do that. Maybe because it's within the maybe if I take away optimize for video clip, it'll be better.
It's not playing nicely with others.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on. Let's try this again. Can you see them now?
Yes.
Yeah.
You see the guy this time? All right. Well, let's go back and see it from the beginning of this one.
Hi, this is the dance of the kangaroo. In my grandmother's language, we call the kangaroo bunda. For this reason, bunda, 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 bunda. Now, in this circumstance, we're going to call it Ugaranji because there's 600 mainstream Aboriginal languages. It's a song written by my two good friends, William Barton and Sean Chulbra, from the Kalkadunga and the Kokoyalanji tribes. It's the dance about the kangaroo, Ugaranji.
Wow.
Hi, this is the dance of the kangaroo. In my grandmother's language, we call the kangaroo bunda. For this reason, bunda bunda.
So were you able to see and hear that?
Oh,
Yes.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
What did you think of it?
Boy, that's powerful. Whew.
It's
That's-
different. Yeah, it really is. I could imagine the guy being like a kangaroo. Yeah, I really could.
Yeah, he was taking on the color of the habits, the way of chewing the leaves and all that, and the jumping.
Yeah.
It was, and
Yeah.
it's a different atmosphere, but it has to do with some of becoming one. I believe the idea is to take on some of the spirit of that animal. Each of the
Yes.
animals, as I recall, has some quality that you want to take on.
Right.
The lion, the kangaroo, whatever.
And it is an ultimate expression of reverence for that animal.
Yeah,
That you want to take on its qualities. You don't lay yourself on it. You want to take on its qualities.
exactly. You want to take on the strength of an animal, the grace of an animal, whatever it does, and that's beautiful. Part of me wants to go back and just show you Colors of the Wind again. I'm trying to figure out why you couldn't see it. I mean, should we go on to new things, or do you want to see Colors of the Wind? What would you rather do?
Go on to new things.
Okay.
You can send us the links.
Yeah, I can send you the links, and I
If
gotta
that's
remember who's
okay.
here. I think I forgot to send some stuff to you, Troy. Let's see. Let's see. So I've gotten a bunch of, oops, if I could, and we don't have time to see all these. So some of them, the things I collected for you, stuff about a vision quest and how it's done. The fact that the game of lacrosse and the way it came out of religious practices of Native Americans. And I wanted to show voodoo in Haiti and how that works. And some of the things the Aztecs did for sacrifice, because, not all of this was nice. Some of this was pretty bloody. Yeah, the same idea of human sacrifice for the Incas, and
Yeah.
what's it like at a Navajo sweat lodge, and what the Lakota Sundance is like. So a lot of interesting documentaries. We obviously don't have time for all of them. Anyone have one jump out at you, like, I really want to see that together, as opposed to seeing it later?
The lacrosse,
Which one?
lacrosse,
Lacrosse?
coming out of the medicine.
Sure. Yeah, it's a medicine game, lacrosse. Let's try this. Yeah. Can you see it? First, can you see the screen?
No,
Okay. Can you see where this video is supposed to go? And could you hear it when I played it?
No,
No.
Why
it's
is
blank.
It's blank. You're just seeing a blank. So you're not seeing YouTube. You're not seeing anything.
No,
No.
sir.
blue screen.
So weird.
Mine's gray, but close enough.
Yeah. I think maybe what I have to do is for share screen, I have to do it. What are you seeing now?
You.
All of us.
All of you? Yeah, well, that's not what I'm trying to have you see. We know what we look like. Let's try something else here. Let me go back into the Zoom. Okay, so share screen should get us to Medicine Game. Can you see it now?
Yeah, see the screen.
Okay.
We see the YouTube.
This program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
It's a game that was given to us long ago, before there was an Earth. That's how old it is. Kachikwae is what we call it. They bump hips. The primary purpose of it is to entertain the Creator. In its first essence, it's a medicine game. The medicine, the ability for it to help, was one of the gifts that came with it.
Hold on. Go. Here we go. Two left, two.
Step in, Jeremy. Make contact. Okay, now come across. Boom. Okay, stop right there. Okay. You don't see anybody in front of you.
Nope.
What do you do? Go. You're gonna keep going. That's your shot right there. I mean, if you see him there, you just tuck it in and you gotta go this way. I taught my boys to respect the game of lacrosse. And respect means to play as hard as you can, you know. Go out there and give everything you can because you're playing for the Creator. It's our heritage, you know, to try to respect the trees, the plants, everything. I mean, through a lot of our ceremonies, that's what we're taught.
Over here is the cross. Supper table, down the road, after a game. That's all we hear. That's when they're the happiest, is when they're playing a game of lacrosse. You know, it's not the same without a lacrosse game going on.
I love the game. I love playing it. Makes me feel good. I just love the game so much, so I'll probably play as long as I can.
I was considered probably a pretty good player. As I was playing, my boys would always sit there and watch the game, whereas other kids, they would go run around, get snacks and stuff like that. But my 4 boys, I can say honestly that they would sit there and watch. And so I knew they were learning the game.
I didn't think of my boys as being like special lacrosse players. I just thought of them as average lacrosse players like any other boys, you know. People would say, oh my God, you see what he did? Like, talking about my boys, you know. It never really clicked in until I kept hearing it over and over on.
And that doesn't give you as much of the history. I hadn't seen, it's part of a larger thing. Let's see, let's get back over to
Hey, I have to go, Father John.
all right, just slip on out, and that's okay. And you stop
See you
sharing
guys.
and get back. And we just have about another 8 minutes. But but I'm happy to see anyone thoughts on the lacrosse. That I hadn't seen that whole video before. It was a little bit not as much about it, other than that you're playing for the Creator. There's one I couldn't find that really explained how in Native American times, you know, before white people were around, it was worship and it was game and it was community. It was about healing from and it was about and it wasn't necessarily competitive. You just wanted to get out there.
Well, the thing that comes over to me, like if you take a standard baseball game or a football game or basketball or soccer or whatever, it's pretty much about what's going on right here and now.
Yes.
Well, that game is not only the here and now, but there's something ancient coming up in it. And that's what animates it, I think. It's something ancient and old and spiritual that comes up through it, you see. It's ages old that's going on with that game. So it just isn't about, sitting in watching and standing, eating hot dogs and popcorn and watching your favorite. It's something that's very ancient that flows up through it that seems to animate it and give it all that power. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I was struck by how much it spoke to something deep inside the boys. It wasn't just about this is fun.
Yeah.
It was
Or just competitive.
I mean, it was fun, but it was about a lot more than that for them. It was a culture, it was part of their identity in a way that the Hakka is for the other people.
Yeah, yeah.
It would be interesting. It would be interesting to know culturally why. I know 50 years ago, lacrosse was mostly an East Coast thing. The champions were always Johns Hopkins University, University of Maryland. They were all centered. And if there is a direct line to indigenous communities leaving that, it just would be interesting to know, because it was
I don't know
not
the whole
like,
history. I mean, the stereotype of lacrosse is like a rich white boys game.
Yeah.
At this point, I mean, certainly like St. George's School where I taught, lacrosse was a very big sport. And, but the kids were very interested learning about this connection. But that it was for, and I saw something in one of the documentaries about how in some ways it had the origins. I think this is the other video, that it ended up becoming like those very people that started it got excluded from it.
Yeah.
Turned into like the rich white boys thing. And
well, it's kind of what you call a cultural misappropriation.
Yeah.
They appropriate something from the culture, but they don't know the whole thing of it. I mean, it's been misappropriated because it has a different meaning.
Yeah, well, that's the danger, that it just becomes, this is fun for us to do, as opposed to having a deeper meaning to it. Well, even like the song we all love to sing, in the jungle, the lion sweeps tonight. We have it as almost as a happy song, but it's actually a song, I think, about the death of an African tribal leader when they said the lion sleeps tonight.
Oh, I know that.
And the original South African recording of it is very different. It got taken over by a bunch of white people, made money off of it, and made the catchy tune that we all know.
Yeah.
And how do we go back and respect where these things came from?
Wow.
And but it's very interesting stuff. But anyway, we have a lot here that is much more than we have time to show tonight. But I'm trying to, how do I take down the names of everybody that's here so I can, let me send myself a text so I know who to send it to. Because I don't think I got it to everybody last week. And this time I'll have recorded it, which helps. Let's see. So it's Lynn, Jack, Ed, Jessica,
Lydia,
Troy. I don't know who Jenny was. And is there someone else that was here too that had to leave that I haven't gotten? Lynn, Jack, Ed, Jessica, Lydia, Troy. I don't know who Jenny was. Just from seeing, it just showed the first name, so.
The only other one was Ed. But you got him.
Yeah, and then Sarah was going to try to come on, but her daughter had a game somewhere. But this time we've recorded it.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Well, next week we'll move on to Hinduism, and I hope it's helpful. And I was going to talk about, we don't really have time, about how this connects to Christianity and what's similar and what's different is something to give some thought to. We just really, this only gives us a chance to scratch the surface, but I'm hoping it will lead to more.
At the beginning, I thought of the Celtic faith
Oh, yeah.
relating to every movement during the day and everything that they came in contact with. There were similarities there.
Well, that's a good point. Yeah, like Celtic Christianity did that, and that came out. And of course, I would think the Celts are talking about another kind of indigenous group.
Yeah,
which I had not thought of in this connection.
Well, as an outdoor educator, what I just wanted to share one last thing is that people that I work with, I suggest that they find a place they can go to a spot maybe once a week, maybe where they're walking their dog or wherever, where it's still and they can spend some time with nature and kind of for that moment find where the center of the earth is. Even if you spend a few minutes or 20 minutes in the different seasons, it readjusts you psychologically.
Oh, it does. I found just sitting out there with the moon, and it was so huge as it came up over the trees. I'll probably go back out when we're done.
And just a regular practice like that, you know, just kind of because natives would do that all the time, but just to, especially in this beautiful part of the world, where there's parks and and farms and I have a spot at Rocky Gap I go to, but a sit spot, but that spend some time. I call it sometimes it's called dirt time. Spend some time at the center of the world and see what that feels like. Even it's incongruent with everything else you're experiencing, but what the heck.
Yes. Well, it's 8:15, so I promise to let you go on time. I wish everyone a wonderful week. See you in church. And
thank you.
See you hopefully next Thursday. Bye-bye.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for this. Yes, wonderful.